I think God might be real, just not in the way you think. Part 3, by Weathers writing. Darkness gave way to dimness as I opened my eyes and saw slivers of gray light printed on the ceiling like lines on the page of a ruled notebook. In the distance, I heard the sound of pans clanking against the kitchen stove, and I became ever aware of the scent of cinnamon and bacon sneaking in from under the closed bedroom door. For a moment, I was back in 6th grade. My dad was downstairs cooking up his famous from-scratch buttermilk pancakes and cheesy scrambled eggs. It was probably 7 o'clock, maybe 7:05, and I had 15 minutes to get up, shower, dress, eat, and then get off to middle school with my dad, for me to learn, and for him to work. It was the day we were set to be assigned our ancient civilization project. Unless something went terribly wrong, I would be choosing ancient Rome. I didn't know much about it, other than it was some great empire. But even then, I didn't really understand what an empire was. I was just happy that I would get to build something with my dad. I turned on my side and looked at the closed blinds, the source of the gray lines, and then the cabinet with all of my trophies. And finally, the wobbly fire truck red chair pushed under my desk. I was at home at last. The past 15 years were nothing but a dream. There was no blinking, no malevolent demon chasing me, no inexplicable chaos. It was a sweet fantasy, but one that became bitter the longer I tried to chew on it. I swept my legs out from under the covers and sat, face down, on the corner of my twin mattress. My feet were adults' feet. My room was my former room, and that was Trent downstairs cooking breakfast. Unless, of course, it was my dad, in which case I'd have bigger issues than just waking up from a good dream. After changing into a fresh shirt and pants, I went downstairs and saw that it was, in fact, Trent cooking breakfast. He was wearing a plain t-shirt through which I could see his rippling large back muscles as he whisked what I presumed was pancake batter. He must not have heard me, because he didn't turn around when I made it to the end of the hall. I leaned against the wall, arms folded, and watched him for a minute as he finished whisking the batter, and then poured it onto the hot griddle, spilling a few dribbles on the counter in the process, watching it bubble, flipping it, and then transferring the golden medallion onto a plate stacked 5 high. For the pancakes was a plate filled with bacon, and a small aluminum pan of scrambled eggs. "Smells good," I said at last. "Find everything okay?" I thought I might startle him with my abrupt appearance. Instead, Trent looked over his shoulder, chewing on a piece of bacon. He swallowed it and said, "Oh, it's you. I hope you don't mind. I woke up early, wanted to make us some breakfast." It occurred to me that Trent likely wasn't a guest in people's homes very often. Lucky for him, that hadn't been mine in years. I was going to tell him as much when I saw an open box of Bisquick sitting on the counter. I pointed to it and asked, "You found that in the pantry? My dad normally makes his from scratch." He turned to look at the box and then back at me. "Oh, no, I went out and got that, along with the bacon and eggs. I didn't want to dig into your supply, and you were asleep, so I couldn't ask." I felt my eyebrows furrow as I checked the time on the stove clock. It's 8:17 in the morning. Are you telling me you went out to the store, bought all these ingredients, and then came back and cooked them? Just how early did you get up? Around 5. As if I had asked his dog's name. I don't usually get much sleep. Around 4, 5 hours is all I need. It's actually pretty unusual for us in tennis to need more. But I suppose you are pretty unusual. I opened my mouth in disbelief. Not only had he commandeered my kitchen, he was calling me unusual? At 8:17 in the morning? "Sorry," Trent said, reading my expression. Let's just say I've not had many personal relationships. I'm used to being blunt. It's just easier that way." He took out a plate and transferred 2 pancakes, some eggs, and a few slices of bacon onto it, and then he held it up to me as a peace offering. I sighed. "This better be good," I said with a wry smile, and took the plate. "Trent certified. No guarantees. Refunds not allowed," he replied, which made me giggle. We sat across from one another at the dining room table. The meal was pretty good, but it was no dad's special. The pancakes were clearly box pancakes. The scrambled eggs lacked the cheese and had a little too much pepper. The bacon was... it was bacon. No complaints here. Still, it was nice to settle down and have a somewhat normal morning. After we ate, Trent unfurled the long arc of his life, which began as the second youngest brother of 8 siblings in rural Oklahoma. Trent's pops was in the logging business, first as a lumberjack, and then as an owner of his own logging company. His dad acquired the business while Trent was still young, so school was never a priority for him, at least not in the way contributing to the household was. The rest of his childhood is summed up in 2 lessons. Being close has nothing to do with distance, and don't touch strange plants in the woods. I asked him if he kept in touch with any of his siblings, to which he responded saying, "The only reason they haven't had a funeral for me is because it would be too much work." When I asked him to elaborate, he said he'd not had contact with anyone in his immediate family for over a decade. He kept tabs on them. For example, he knew his mother had dementia, and his dad was forced into retirement by his oldest brother, who had gone on to take over the logging company. His sisters were all married and moved to other parts of the country. He considered reaching out several times. Situation required a degree of security that wasn't conductive of close family ties. Not that there were particularly strong ties even before he broke contact. Trent admitted to being a bit of a black sheep. "It all circles back around to one of my jobs as a home inspector," he explained. "After I moved out, I tried college, quickly realized it wasn't for me. So I entered into the workforce and did a bunch of odd jobs. Construction, carpentry, plumbing. I even did garbage truck for a while, but I ended up in home inspection. There was one job in particular which made me aware of..." Trent paused and gestured toward the space between us. "Our situation, the blinks. Do you remember what I told you about the origin points being like a station where the other realms intersect with our world? Well, and this house was like the Union Station or JFK Airport, if you prefer a plane analogy. There was a pile of junk up to my knees in the basement of that house. All of it had been blinked in. I spent a couple days on the property running tests, trying to identify the strange phenomena, but on day 3, I rolled up to an army of what I thought, at the time, were feds, parading around the property like ants on an anthill and sectioning it off with crime scene tape." I saw disgust funnel into Trent's expression. "They're not feds at all, though. At least not anymore. I call them the organization, a group of people who let in the formalized understanding of what you know as blinking. And they're the reason I have to take precautions." I considered this for a moment. Trent's story was certainly plausible, but I was missing a key piece of the puzzle. "Okay, so what does this organization want? You make it seem like they're not good people. Have they tried attacking you?" This caused Trent to laugh for a solid 10 seconds. Sorry, it's just... I mean, if you knew what I knew, you might think it's funny too." "Then tell me." Trent took a deep breath and then released. "It's a long story. The gist of it is this. The organization has a certain device which I call the receiver. You think of it like a giant antenna. No, not us kind of antennas. An actual antenna. And like the machine, it's like the machine equivalent of us, but with 1 billion times the bandwidth. Their goal is to use the receiver to map out our world in relation to other dimensions, and then use that map to establish dominion over everyone and everything. In order to do this, they need muscle, both human muscle and antenna muscle. They're in the process of harvesting as many of us as they can find. They're like a giant diamond company who are taken into the mines. When they find a stone, they take it back to their factory for cutting and refinement. In real terms, they run tests on us in an attempt to augment our powers. The power goal is to create a stronger antenna, or an antenna capable of causing phase shifts, blinks." Trent saw from my expression that he was starting to lose me, so he stood up and began rolling up his shirt. "What are you doing?" I asked, turning away. Then I saw what he wanted to show me. There was a long scar running high up his ribs and slashing all the way down his left hip. There was also what appeared to be a patch of burn marks on his stomach. "It was early on when I got these," he explained. "I was naive. I actually thought I'd be able to reason with these people. The only reason I escaped was because of dumb luck and a box of hand grenades. I learned 2 important lessons that day. First, the organization isn't fucking around. 2, they aren't immortal. Most of them are regular, everyday humans, except for their obsession with power." Trent let his shirt fall, covering up the marks. "I ran into them again recently at their headquarters. My team and I are working on a plan to..." He paused, seemingly weighing his words, then changed gears. "Well, I guess we can go over that another time." I couldn't help but feel like Trent was holding something back. As much as I tried to resist thinking about yesterday, the old demon man's words kept ringing in my head. Then I thought about what Trent said at the deli. That's the thing that's got me really interested in you. Somehow, you seem to be able to control it without gear, just by praying. Did Trent think I was a strong antenna? Is that the only reason that he's helping me? Because he wants to recruit me? If that's the case, what if I said no? Listen, Trent, I started, but I saw Trent was already nodding, and still I pressed on. I need you to tell me what I'm actually doing here. Why did you agree to help me, and what does helping me really mean? I want to know the truth. Well, the truth is... Trent started, and then stopped, and looked out the glass door that led onto the back deck. I looked too, and saw a sparrow had alighted on our old bird feeder. It tried pecking at some of the non-existent grains, and then sang what I assumed was a song of displeasure before taking back off to the skies. The truth is, I do want to recruit you. I think you have the potential to be the strongest tool in my arsenal, but I won't require it. To date, I've helped 53 of our kind, but only 7 have stayed on. Most decide to go on and live normal lives. Trent scooted his plate closer to the side. In our case, this can essentially go one of two ways. In either instance, we pass through Chicago for 2 stops. First, I need to meet up with an associate who has something to drop off to me. Then I need to stop at a storage locker and trade out some gear that will allow me to open the phase portal. When we arrive at your origin point, I'll open up the phase portal and you'll look inside. Based on everything you told me, I'm guessing that childhood accident was when the demon appended itself to your life, but seeing how it entered your life, you should be able to figure out how to dispel it. At least that's the working theory. Returning to the origin point has always worked for the other antennas, although I must admit that your situation is different, but I can't imagine it's so different that this method won't work at all. After you return demon-free, you're free. You can walk out and never see me again, and hopefully you'll live a happy and peaceful life. Or you can decide to throw your lot in with mine, and I can show you how deep the rabbit hole really goes, so to speak. Trent looked into my eyes, and when I didn't respond for a few seconds, he said, That's it. That's all I got. I smiled and responded with one sentence. When do we leave? Memories have a strange architecture. In some ways, they are a great safety net for our experiences, collecting them like a bucket under a leaky roof. But in other ways, they're like an eternal reminder that nothing ever truly lasts. Perhaps a better way of thinking about memories is as the ghosts of our past, lingering in the present. As I took one last stroll through my childhood house, feeling that it might be my last chance for a long while, I felt the imprints of childhood memories press into my awareness. I could hear my father's voice reading to me at my bedside. I could see him holding one of my stuffed animals above my head as I wrestled him for it. I also recalled the times when I'd sneak down the stairs late at night, quietly open the freezer, grab the ice cream carton, and then head back upstairs to eat it. I felt a yearning to return to those memories, to walk into the fictitious pictures my mind was painting on the canvas of my present. I knew I couldn't return, but I still wanted something to hold on to. I went back to my room and grabbed the cotton stuffed tomato from off of my closet cabinet. Then I walked through my dad's study and removed a volume I recalled him frequently reading, a hardcover book with a green binding called A Collection of Great Works. I placed these items by my feet in the passenger seat of Trent's van, and just as we were about to leave, I remembered something else. My plant, I blurted out. Your what? My plant, and my car. I left them at the deli. Do you think we could swing by there and get it? Trent checked the time and then said, yeah, I guess we can. I hope it isn't towed. Luckily, it wasn't. I half expected to find a ticket on the windshield, but there wasn't one of those either. I unlocked the door to my Jetta, and I got into what felt like an actual oven. Hot, I said, and rolled down all the windows, and then cranked up the AC. I saw my plant resting in the cup holder that I'd left it in the previous day. I picked it up and touched its soil. It was dry and beginning to crack. Hang on, little guy, I thought, and then I led the way back to my house. When I arrived, I parked in the head of the driveway, turned off the car, and then ran inside with the young tomato plant, bringing it to the upstairs bathroom sink and dousing it in water. I wasn't sure how much I was supposed to add, but I figured after the sauna experience it had yesterday, I could afford to go a little overboard. And once it was fed, I opened the small purple drapes and placed it in the windowsill which faced east, meaning it would hopefully get plenty of morning sunlight. Good now? Trent asked as I hopped back in the passenger seat of his van. Yeah, I said. Good now. Let's get a move on. Road tripping with Trent was a much different experience than when we were driving for our lives. For one, Trent wasn't nearly as tense. He drove with the windows down and one hand on the steering wheel like out of a Mustang commercial, talking intermittently about his adventures, people he'd met, jobs he'd done, close calls. He was like a living radio. And when his personal station wasn't on, he was playing one of his CDs, classic rock, mainly. When he was in an off period, I found myself looking out the window at the rolling wheat fields and the cloudy blue sky. Journey was playing, and the lyrics to one of the songs crept into my head and reverberated there. The wheel in the sky keeps on turning. I don't know where I'll be tomorrow. I've been trying to make it home. Gotta make it before too long. Oh, I can't take it very much longer. In a strange way, I felt like I was leaving home. But in another way, I was going back. And then it occurred to me that perhaps I didn't have a home at all. Did I ever have one? These past couple of days had called everything about my life into question, to the point where the past seemed as mysterious as the future, and both intersected at the one place in the woods, the place where it all began, the place where we were headed. We only stopped once at a gas station to refuel, get snacks, and use the bathroom. Otherwise, it was smooth sailing. Well, other than the one heated discussion with Trent that began when he addressed his vehicle as car for the 5th time. Okay, you need to come up with a better name than that. What do you mean? Trent asked, seeming genuinely confused. You have a supercar, and you named it Car. That's actually embarrassing. But it is a car. I facepalmed. First of all, it's a van. A van is a type of car. Second of all, would you name your kid Kid? Trent thought it over for what I thought was much too long. At last he concluded, no, I'd probably name him Boy, or if it's a girl, Girl. After 5 more minutes of his childish banter, we settled on the name Ava, my choice, after rejecting his runner-up name, Scar. At around the 7-hour mark, I dozed off, then woke up a couple hours later to the sensation of the van dipping, then bumping up into an elevated climb. The evening sunlight that was pressuring my eyelids to open dissipated, and everything was suddenly dark. I opened my eyes and saw we had entered a parking garage. Trent pulled into an open spot on the 2nd level. We're here, he said, and gathered up his gun, which he'd stashed in the driver's side underboard compartment that I'm guessing he had installed himself. I see that. You want to wait here, or... I opened the car door, which was an answer enough for Trent. We both got out and started down Maple Avenue. I'd been to several cities before, Chicago among them, but the size of the buildings always struck me with awe. As we walked alongside dozens of other pedestrians, I looked up and traced the closest tower to its peak, guessing how many stories it was in my head. Then I'd be pulled out of my game by the honking of some nearby vehicle. We continued for 2 blocks until Trent made a path directly towards the nearest Starbucks. I didn't know what I was picturing for a meeting with his associate, but it definitely wasn't a meetup at a coffee shop. But still, I followed him in. And then, when I saw that Trent was leading me to the corner table where a casually dressed Chinese girl who appeared even younger than me was sitting, I blurted out in a hushed tone, Her? She's your associate? Took you long enough, said the Chinese girl, looking up from what appeared to be some kind of homework assignment. And she's in school? I asked, incredulous. The associate looked to me, and then to Trent, who nodded, and then back to me. It's just a cover. I'm glad to see it still works, though. She reached out to shake my hand. I'm Allison. Nice to meet you. Trent gave me a smirk, and then said, Looks can be deceiving. I grunted an affirmation, and shook Allison's hand. I'm Lauren. It's nice to meet you. You have it? Trent asked, skipping right to business. Of course I have it. Allison replied, and removed a mailing packet from her backpack, setting it on the table. You want to go make sure it works? She asked, gesturing up to the ceiling with her eyes. Trent seemed to think it over for a second, then looked at me. But before he could say anything, Allison cut back in. I'll stay here with her. It's been a while since I've had any female company. Why don't you let us girls talk Well, you take care of that, she said in a seductive yet authoritative tone, which garnered her years that her appearance did not reflect. Trent hesitated, but only for a moment. Okay, I'll be right back, he said, and then hurried out the door in the direction that we had come from. Come, sit with me, Allison invited. Tell me about yourself. I took a seat on the small wooden seat opposite Allison, and then crossed my legs. Oh, what do you want to know? I asked, feeling discomfort rise in my stomach. Nothing about this situation, from the mysterious package, to Trent leaving me alone with this girl, to the girl herself, whose voice was as velvety smooth as the latte she was stirring with the black coffee straw, sat right with me. Look, Shug, I'm curious about what you think of Trent. Trent? I repeated. I realized this was the first time I was putting any of my thoughts about Trent or our relationship into words. I guess he's a pretty straightforward guy. He seems to know what he's doing. Allison flashed me a small smile, then took a sip of her latte. I saw the sticker from her drink red chai. Then she set the cup down and sighed. Yes. He's very straightforward. Definitely doesn't mince words. She looked up into my eyes. Hers were rich black, like onyx pebbles, but there was something about the way the light refracted off of them which simulated a kind of inward motion, as if there were tiny whirlpools. Her smile spread across her lips. I'm curious. What did he tell you? Tell me about what? About what you're doing? About where you're off to? What's the plan? You don't know? I asked, but it immediately occurred to me that maybe she didn't know. I never saw Trent with a cell phone. Just how did he communicate with his associates? And what if he didn't want her to know what we were doing for a good reason? Should I tell her? No. Trent keeps his cards close to his chest. He always has. Don't you work together, though? Allison waved her left hand in the air. Of course. But it's because of the nature of our work that most of our communication is done in person. So Trent doesn't tell me much outside of the current job. I was just curious is all. That makes sense. I mean, I'm actually pretty curious about what you do, too. Oh? Allison's voice went high, as if she suddenly sensed an opening. Then why don't we trade stories? You tell me about your trip, I'll tell you about mine. I thought it over for a second. I really did want to hear what Allison had to say, and she was Trent's co-worker. It's not like I was spilling crucial secrets to an enemy. Oh, we're currently on our way to southern Illinois. Specifically, we're going back to my origin point so I can confront a demon that Trent thinks blinked into my life there. Allison stopped stirring, but her eyes didn't break mine. A demon, huh? She raised the cup and then took a long sip, and then placed it back on the table and continued stirring. I met a demon once. She started, looking up at the walls as if her life was playing on a screen there. It was back in China, where I was born. She dropped her attention back to me. Do you mind if I reminisce a little? Maybe you can get something out of it. I shook my head, but something in my gut started to stir again. Allison continued. I was born during the era of the one-child policy. As a result, my mother decided to leave me in a shoebox on the side of the road. I was a girl, so that's just how it was. Like many other babies in my condition, I ended up in foster care. However, for whatever reason, I wasn't adopted. Years passed, and when I turned 6, the government decided I would be better used building our impoverished town's GDP in a factory that assembled electronic devices for Western countries. Mostly they had me cleaning, but when I turned 8, one of the employees asked me for my help with one of the soldering machines. It turned out to be the beginning of the end for me. I sliced open the ring finger of my right hand. I remember specifically seeing the bone underneath the split flesh and thinking it looked so small and white. The employee claimed to have nothing to do with my accident, and the management declared my injury minimally invasive and closed it up. 2 weeks later, and who would have guessed that the wound would become infected? And well, Allison dropped the straw into her cup and raised her right hand, spreading the fingers out for me to see. And there were only 4. Her ring finger was missing, and a small V-shaped scar had taken its place. I'm lucky the surgeon was experienced enough to take out the whole digit. That way it healed in a way which makes it somewhat difficult to notice. No, you didn't notice after all. But then again, is that really luck? She made a fist and brought it to her lips, stifling a cough. No, now I remember. My luck was still yet to come. She continued stirring. Because you see, after that incident, They moved me to a clothing factory with a boss who had a penchant for getting drunk and roughing up his workers. Well, one night I was walking back to foster care when I heard the outside door to my manager's office slam shut, and there he went, stumbling and slurring insults, curses. And here I was, perfectly in his path. We met eyes, and in them I saw absolutely nothing. A hollow shell of a man. I can still remember what it looked like to see the shell fill with a demon. Allison's eyes went wide with some strong emotion that I couldn't place. He grabbed me by my hair and dragged me out into the field, far away from civilization. I tried to fight at first, but every time I tried to lunge away, I was only ripping a hole in my own scalp. It felt like flames were spewing from my head. My only respite was when the blood eventually cooled over the wound. By the time he had thrown me against the rock, I had already all but given up. When my head met the stone, I heard a pop. My grip on the world loosened. The man continued touching me, but it was as if I was disconnected now, floating somewhere above my own head. The gravity was beginning to reverse, causing me to float higher and higher, away from the horrible nightmare below. Allison paused for a moment, and I suddenly realized I was holding my breath. Then I saw the most bright light I'd ever seen. At the time, I thought it was either the sun or heaven or something like that. It was just too bright for this world. But then, after looking for a little longer, I noticed it was the shape of a person. It reached out towards me. I had never been so quick to respond. When I touched it, I felt all my pain immediately dissipate, and I felt warm and peaceful. I was no longer in the sky. I was back in the field. When I looked around, the man was gone, vanished right out of existence. I didn't understand at the time, but that was my first experience with the shifts. All I knew then was that I was free, and I damn well wasn't going to waste that. I ran as far as I could, away from the factories, the foster home, the corrupt governments and corporations. I kept running until I arrived at a city that didn't know me, that didn't want to know me. And I liked it that way, because it's easier to live as a ghost than as a victim. Allison perked up, and when I turned around to see what for, I saw Trent entering back through the door. But you know what's interesting? Allison blurted out, her voice becoming quieter. Trent never took me back to confront my demon. Her voice became a whisper. In fact, I can't recall him ever taking any of us back. For a moment, the whole world became a still frame. Allison's clear, olive skin and dark eyes, made darker with eyeliner, her narrow nose, her small lips now coiling into a smile. My entire body was a hair trigger that only needed the slightest force to set it off. And when Trent placed his hand on my shoulder, I whirled around and narrowly missed a haymaker that swept just shy of Trent's face. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," he said and stepped back, palms up. "It's just me. Is everything okay?" I turned back to Allison, but she seemed different now. Her expression was benign, confused. "Are you okay?" she asked. You... We were just talking about where you were off to next," Allison said without a hint of pretense. "Okay, well, chat time's over. It's time to go," Trent said, and started guiding me towards the door. I turned back and saw Allison mouth some words which I swear I heard, as if they'd been directly transmitted to my brain. "See you soon," she purred. The next leg of the trip passed mostly in silence. It was a little over an hour to the storage facility, which was located just south of Chicago. My heart was beating wildly in my chest as I pictured Allison's smile. I wanted to ask Trent if demons could possess antennas, if somehow one of us could become compromised. But then I remembered Allison's words and stopped myself, because I didn't know if I really could trust Trent. I tried to tell myself I could trust him, that it was Allison who was the liar. Her whole persona seemed fake at best, possessed at worst. But then, what if she was telling the truth? What if Trent was the enemy? He sensed my quietness and tried striking up a couple conversations, but I only gave one-word answers. Somehow our trust was so brittle that a single, well-placed sentence was enough to snap it. When he asked if everything was okay, I lied and said that I just had a headache and I needed more rest. So I leaned my head against the stuffed tomato and tried to sleep, even though I knew I wouldn't be able to. We arrived at the facility just as the sun was setting for the night. Trent pulled up to the self-service gate and scanned a card, which caused the automatic doors to swing open. We looped down a couple rows of the outdoor units until we came to number 48. "We're here," Trent prompted, but this time I didn't budge. I felt his eyes on me after he turned off the ignition. "Hey," he called. "Are you awake?" I was silent. I heard Trent quietly click open his door, and then close it the same way. I waited a few seconds and then turned my head and watched him from the driver's side mirror. He opened the storage locker and then walked inside and turned on a light. It occurred to me now how dimly lit this outdoor storage facility was. There was a weak overhead lantern peeking out every fourth garage like an anglerfish's lure, leaving a large portion of the road not hit by the light bubbles completely dark. I tried to plan my next move. I could leave Trent and run, but where would I go? Or I could stay and see Trent's plan through. There was a chance this was all an elaborate trap. Maybe Trent was working with the demon, or maybe he was the demon. But then why did he save me? Twice. Maybe he was actually a double agent for the organization, but he could easily have captured me by now, unless he needs me to go back to the origin point for a different reason. I considered everything I had learned up to this point. We live at the cross-section of different realms. These other realms interact with our world. Antennas, who are a very small minority of people, can see these interactions. The organization wants to harness our power and create a strong antenna to achieve some kind of global hegemony. I'm the closest thing to a strong antenna to date. Trent knows this. He's taking me back to my origin point, despite not taking the others back to theirs. Trent claims to want to fight the organization. The best way to fight the organization would be with a strong antenna. What if Trent was trying to make me into a strong antenna? I considered this chain of reasoning. It seemed very plausible, especially after Allison's cryptic message. Was she trying to warn me of this? But that smile, and the "see you soon." If she wasn't being possessed, why would she be seeing me soon? Suddenly, my thoughts gave way like a broken dam as I heard the ping come from Ava's radar. I jumped, thinking that all of the electronics were turned off with the ignition, but when I looked at the circular sonar map, I saw a red dot had just emerged from the top right corner. I looked out the window in the direction of the ping, but I couldn't see anything heading down the road. 4 more dots appeared behind the first, and then they were approaching. I jumped out of the van and ran over to where Trent was hauling in a large cardboard crate into the back of the van. Trent! There's pings on the radar! A bunch of them!" He dropped the box next to 3 others, and I realized I had never seen inside the back of the van. It was filled with what looked like pneumatic tubes wired into circuits, and in the center was a tripod which was holding a very large, halo-shaped ring. "Ping?" Trent said. His face widened with shock as he realized what I meant. "Shit, how many?" 5, maybe more now? And they're getting closer." 5? He jumped out of the back and ran to the storage locker. I thought he was going to close the door, but I saw him hauling boxes back towards the van. I yelled at him, "What are you doing?" "I need to load this up for tomorrow. Here." He tossed me his keys. "Get it started." "Fuck, seriously?" Trent didn't respond, only kept shuffling the boxes into the van. I turned and ran to the door and hopped in the driver's seat. As I was turning the ignition, I saw the row of bushes that was just outside of the facility begin to rattle. The next sweep revealed a whole sea of pings. I rolled down the window and shouted Trent's name. "One more, that's all. Get in the passenger seat, I'll be there in a sec." I scooted over to the center console and waited, clutching at the bottom of my pant legs. Just as Trent slammed the rear door of the van shut, I saw the first figure emerge into the road ahead of us. It looked like some kind of large coyote. "Now detecting 53 controlled agents," Ava said, right as Trent jumped in and shut the driver's side door. "Net anomalies. 53. "Ava, increase radius to 5 miles, Trent instructed as he backed up all the way to the end of the lane and spun us around towards the gate. Just as we left, I saw the pack of coyotes stalking towards us, slow at first, and then in a dead sprint. "Increasing radius," Ava responded. "Increased. Recalculating. Complete. Now detecting 451 controlled agents. Net anomalies. 451. What does controlled agent mean?" I asked. "Hold on," Trent said as he accelerated into the gate, bursting through it. The whole van shook and I heard my phone fall in the crack between the seat and the door. Trent steadied the van and then said, "It means the things chasing us are being controlled by something that isn't detectable." Demon? That'd be my guess. But why can't Ava detect it? Trent switched to the right lane and then merged onto the Interstate South ramp, probably because it isn't trying to kill us. Then what? I looked back at the map and basically had my question answered. All 451 pings were coalesced in a semicircle on one side of the map. The side of the map that we had just come from. Is it trying to force us toward the crash site? It seems that way. Trent answered. Trent, pull over. Huh? Pull over! I yelled. He looked at me, eyes wide. Then he did as I had instructed and pulled off in the middle of the ramp. The red dot slowly closed in on our position, now detecting. Shut up, Ava, I said. I could feel my blood boiling. I am not going one step further until you tell me the truth. Why are we going to my origin point? What is your real motive? What do you mean? I already told you. I unlocked the passenger side door. Wait, Trent said as he reached out towards me. Just wait. There was a silence, except for the pings indicating that the beasts behind us had re-encroached on our position about 50 meters. Okay, I didn't tell you everything, but we don't have time now. I opened the door. Okay. I didn't tell you everything. It's true. I've never done this with anyone else. But the reason is because I never needed to. And if I told you what might happen, you would have refused it. Refused what? This, me, my help, Lauren. I'm trying to help you. But you have to understand. It's likely that neither of us are going to live past tomorrow. You're basically confronting a dark entity in a place where I can't protect you. And if you somehow do manage to kill it, you'll be coming back to the fight of your life. Because I don't have the power to hide you from the organization. They're going to show up, and they're going to take you. I really don't know how you've lasted as long as you have. Whatever protection you have had growing up, it's gone now. And I'm all you have, and in some twist of fate, you're all I have. Ava reactivated. Now detecting. 1,117. Controlled agents. Proximity till contact. 20 meters. Net anomalies. 1,117. I closed my door. But what if I still don't want to go through with it? Trent pointed at the screen. Then we die. Right here. Right now. Together. Because I'm 100% certain that if we don't go to that crash site, we are dead anyway. All of us. Another ping rolled through, and I checked the side view mirror and saw the swarming pack of dogs reach the van and bound around the rear wheels. I suddenly recalled the conversation I had with Father Martin and the conclusions I had drawn. Father, I've been wrestling with something. I think God wants me to confront it. I think I've been running away and hiding from it for so long that I had convinced myself it disappeared. Go, I said, just as I felt the collision of the coyotes slamming their bodies against the side doors. Trent didn't waste any time and stepped on the gas. I watched as the coyotes diminished in the distance and the pings receded into the back of the map, never disappearing fully, but covering the flank of our retreat. A reminder lingering on the edge of our awareness that there's no turning back now. That one way or another, this was ending tomorrow. I'd either be dead or something else entirely.